Welcome back. South Korea is now undergoing a 7-day somber period of national mourning after more than 150 people were killed and a crowd crushed during Halloween celebrations in downtown Seoul. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has declared a period of national mourning until November 5. Events including local festivals, Halloween parties and K-pop concerts have all been called off. Meanwhile, the first call to police from Itaewon came at 1834 local time, several hours before the deadly crash took place. The caller to South Korea's 112 emergency number said they were on the main street to Itaewon, and an alley next to the Hamilton Hotel was becoming dangerously crowded. According to the caller, that alley is really dangerous right now, people going up and down, so people can't come down, but people keep coming down. It's going to be crushed. I barely made it to get out, but it's too crowded. I think you should control it. The police officer asked if the caller meant that people weren't flowing well, that they get crushed and fall, and then there's going to be a big accident. Yes, the caller responded, saying this is so chilling right now. That was the first of at least 10 calls to police over the next 3 hours. But that night, local residents said the police presence was wholly inadequate. Well, staying with the story, Seoul Mayor Oh Soo-hoon tearfully apologized during a media briefing today and said the city government would deploy all available administrative resources to assist local residents. He said going forward, they will do their best to thoroughly manage safety and prevent dangerous accidents during events where many people gather, as well as come up with related guidelines with the government. He says they will make sure to have measures so that such devastating accidents will never happen again. Over in India, dozens of protesters called for the resignation of the Chief Minister of Gujarat after a suspension bridge in western India collapsed, killing at least 135 people. The responsibility of the death of the people belongs to the Chief Minister, Bhupendra Patel. He should take responsibility of the murder of 150 people and resign, said one unidentified protester. Now, however, the manufacturer behind the bridge's recent renovation did not inform authorities about the reopening and had not been issued a fitness certificate to do so. And this according to the chief officer of the Morbi municipality. Police arrested 9 people Monday on charges of culpable homicide not amounting to murder. Those arrested including ticketing clerks accused of letting too many people onto the bridge and contractors that had overseen repair works.
गुस्सा है कि 150 लोग मोरबी में मारे गए हैं, लेकिन उन लोगों के लिए मगरमच्छ के आंसू बहाने के अलावा
angry protesters there in India about the situation. Well, let's go over to Israel, where citizens went to the polls today as the country launched its 5th election in less than 4 years. Voters in Tel Aviv were reluctant to see a significant change in the results, but hoped for good government. Former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a tight race as he bids for a return to power in an election that could turn on support from a far-right party whose leaders call for those deemed disloyal to Israel to be expelled. A voter exasperation may hurt turnout, but surging support for the ultra-nationalist religious Zionism bloc and firebrand co-leader Itamar Ben-Gvir has galvanized the race. Security and surging prices have topped the list of voter concerns in a campaign triggered by outgoing centrist Prime Minister Yair Lapid's decision to seek an early election following defections from his ruling coalition. The campaign has also taken place against a backdrop of months of violence in the occupied West Bank. Meanwhile, in Brazil, the Supreme Court has ordered police to remove roadblocks erected by supporters of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, who still has not publicly acknowledged his election defeat to left-wing rival Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Justice Alexander de Moraes today called on the Federal Highway Police to disperse the blockades, which were organized primarily by truckers, a key Bolsonaro constituency. Blockages were reported in all but 2 states, causing considerable disruption and affecting food supply chains. With all the votes counted, Lula had 50.9% of the valid votes against Mr. Bolsonaro's 49.11% in Sunday's runoff. There are concerns that the outgoing president could complicate the 2-month transition period before Mr. Lula da Silva, a former president, is due to be sworn in on the 1st of January 2023. Now, according to the Coast Guard in Greece, they rescued 9 migrants and are searching for dozens of others believed to be missing after their boat sank off the island of Evia earlier today. 9 people, all men, were rescued from the shore of Cape Catharis on the southeastern tip of Evia Island amidst high winds reaching 7 to 8 on the Beaufort scale. According to the migrants' account, some 68 people were on the boat. A Coast Guard vessel, a helicopter, 2 boats sailing nearby were taking part in the rescue operation under gale force winds. Video released by the Coast Guard showed the rescue boat searching for the migrants found huddled on shore in choppy waters. Photos show the migrants on the deck of the rescue vessel tightly wrapped in thermal blankets. Last month, dozens of migrants were rescued from 2 shipwrecks off the islands of Lesbos and Charithia, which took place within 24 hours of each other, claiming several lives. A new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak chaired his first cabinet meeting at number 10 Downing Street this morning after Interior Minister Suella Braverman faced heavy criticism for describing the arrival of asylum seekers as an invasion. Her comments came a day after a man used firebombs to attack an immigration processing centre in the port town of Dover before killing himself. Ms. Braverman, who is fighting to save her job after she admitted breaching security rules, told Parliament Monday that she was working to stop the invasion on our southern coast in reference to the arrival of migrants in small boats across the channel from France. Lawmakers across the political spectrum have warned of the risk of using inflammatory language.
Are we going to have to pay more tax, Mr. Sahawi?
A policy analyst, Kosiso Udodi, joins me now for more on the programme. Welcome. What's your take on the UK's policy on migration?
The UK's migration policy has always been chaotic because so you have prime ministers going in and out, and then everything's changing almost every time, and you know, it's been really chaotic. And I think that the most controversial it has been was is from the past, from 2010, and from when Dave Cameron began to institute the net migration policy, where the general idea was trying to balance out the inflow and outflow of people in the UK, and that generally that did not play out very well. That failed, and the repercussions from that were so bad because people were coming to the UK without their loved ones. People were like, there was so much, and it was so bad. It got to the point where they had to start pushing people out. They had to start pressuring on unwanted migrants to leave voluntarily. And what we're seeing today in the UK is it does feel like Suella Braverman is taking that she's taking Cameron's handbook and is trying to force people out of the UK, you know. And the problem with that is if you do not let, because what you're supposed, the determinant of migration policy is economy. So migration does, in a lot of ways, benefit your economy, but you have to let the economy drive your policies on migration. And so far, the UK has not been able to do that. It's been mostly politicians trying to pander to to their party's rules or to their party's faithfuls and keep their footing in their parties. And that's what we've seen, and that's one of the factors that has affected UK's migration policy recently.
And many wonder also, what will happen if, her position essentially is a position of, large number of the United Kingdom. But also, they've also talked about the pressure, a record number of nearly 40,000 asylum seekers that arrived Britain in small boats so far this year. And many wonder if this is too much for the country, considering its current economic challenges to start with. But then Braverman herself appears to be a controversial, interior minister in this regard. So can we say that her reappointment, sends a good, right message? And this is for the cabinet of Rishi Sunak concerning migration?
Yes. So the question over the past couple of days has been why Suella? Because leading to the events that led to her resignation under the Liz Truss administration, and those events have not been assuaded. Those events are still in the face of the public, and so people are asking why her. Are there no other capable people in the Conservative Party who can play this role better? And then is there no one else but Braverman? And people are beginning to question Rishi Sunak's background, because him and Suella Braverman share the same background. They both share the India-Kenya background, and everybody's asking, is this nepotism at play? What exactly is going on? Because there are situations that there was a time it was reported that she leaked MI5 documents, and these things are still stuck in the face of the public. And so everybody's questioning, why Suella Braverman? Do we not have anyone else? Is there nobody else objective enough to lead the Home Office?
Well, we will continue to watch that space. Kosiso, thank you for talking to us at this time.
You're welcome.
And over to the United States, where U.S. ghosts, skeletons, witches flooded the streets of downtown Manhattan in the Village Halloween parade. Jean Fleming, who has been the parade's artistic and also producing director for the past 42 years in its 49 years of existence, spoke on this year's event. Organizers expected about 60,000 participants in this year's Village Halloween parade, most of them in costumes, on floats, in marching bands, or navigating giant puppets.
We're at the 49th New York City Greenwich Village Halloween Parade!
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden hosted a Halloween reception at the White House on Monday, welcoming the children of firefighters, nurses, police officers, and members of the National Guard. The Bidens handed out Halloween treats and posted for photos with the children and their families. Hundreds of children in costumes ranging from fairies to movie characters joined the first couple. The White House was also decorated with trees, pumpkins, and flower bouquets for the event.
That's a great costume. Did you get one of these? I got one of these as well. Thank you.
But it wasn't all happy in Halloween. We'll bring you the latest when we return. Still to come as well. It's priceless. Sotheby's to auction rare first printing of United States Constitution. Welcome back. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins me now on the latest of Halloween celebrations and what happened in Chicago. Hi, Maria. You know, while it appeared there were lots to celebrate, you know, to mark Halloween, it wasn't the case in Chicago. Tell us more.
Yes, you are correct. It was a day in Chicago. People shot. One person was also hurt by a vehicle that actually hit them when they were trying to escape the area. There were 14 individuals that were actually shot as a result of a rampant gunfire that just went off throughout that area in the west side of Chicago. This was at a vigil, unfortunately, that was happening that evening in Chicago, and this vigil was for something that was not dealing with any gun violence. And so there was a drive-by car that came through and just sporadically began to shoot gunfire into the crowds. And so there was believed to be no intentional target. It didn't appear that they were targeting someone individually. It looks like they just began to shoot throughout the crowd. This comes at a time where America has definitely been struggling through the process of gun violence in our communities.
Has the police identified the offenders or any details as to the motive?
They know there was a black SUV that sped off that went to the south of the city. They are still trying to apprehend that. We expect that there will be some sort of a news conference later today to provide additional insight into this. The mayor obviously has spoken out on this issue. Unfortunately, Chicago has been a community for several years now that has been plagued with gun violence. And so this is something that has been a top priority for her administration.
And also, Maria, would you say there's been a rise in you know, the use of guns, gun violence in the United States, or perhaps it's dropping, considering all of the incidents we've witnessed this last 6 months, a year?
Gun violence is definitely a little bit on the rise here recently. We have seen, even when you look at not just this type of gun violence, or we're seeing in many of our urban communities, but you've seen it even as we've talked about, whether it's January 6th, things related to the midterm elections. We've just seen violence brought against the husband of Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi. So the violence in America has reached a rate, I think, that is extremely concerning to many Americans, and is going to draw additional attention from the White House and other branches of the U.S. government, specifically the Senate and the House. And so the question is, are we going to begin to see maybe even laws put in place to remove guns from the street? We know, as we talked a few weeks ago, Times Square has removed the ability to have unconcealed or concealed weapons in the Times Square area of New York. Are other areas and other states going to begin to follow along in that, and noting areas that do have a potentially high rate of gun violence to remove the ability to have guns in those communities?
One also wonders how much, you know, that subject will be key in the midterm elections coming up. We'll speak to you about that. But then today, the breaking story of the Chief Justice, John Roberts, putting temporary hold on release of Trump's tax returns to Congress. He must be happy about that.
Well, you bring up something that has been going on since 2019. There has been a request for the taxes of former President Trump. We know that John Roberts is very strategic in this. He's over the lower courts. That's part of his responsibility as Supreme Court Justice. We know that he comes out of the District Court of Washington, D.C. And so this is definitely a way in which will potentially hold off this information being released. Whether or not he knows what could be lying in those tax returns, I'm not sure if that is as relevant as the fact that next Tuesday is Election Day. So any type of information like this that is released before the end of the week could be detrimental to the Republican Party, especially Republicans that are in the MAGA community and that are a part of more what has aligned with former President Trump's ideologies and principles. And so John Roberts has asked till November 10th, which is 2 days after Election Day. And so I think the thought is that if there is anything in those records and those tax returns, they'll come after the election period, and there will be almost 2 years before the presidential cycle to be able to provide explanation or to have that removed from the memory of many Americans who will be looking at presidential voting in the next 2 years.
Maria, thank you. I know we'll be talking to you in the coming days leading to the midterms. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Let's go over to European Union trade ministers and also U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai. They've had talks in Prague to discuss how to deal with U.S. legislation that the EU sees as discriminating against its electric car makers. Now, non-U.S. car makers have been angered by the U.S. $430 billion Inflation Reduction Act from August, which is aimed at fighting climate change and making Washington a world leader in the electric vehicle market. The U.S. law says electric vehicles have to be assembled in North America to qualify for tax credits. The EU says this discriminates against EU-made cars. And let's go over to Arab youth in the Middle East and North Africa who have placed the upcoming climate summit as inconsequential compared to the challenges of their everyday lives, despite their knowledge of its dangers and frequent exposure to its impact, including sandstorms, wildfires, and heat waves. Now, from Lebanon's failure to elect a president amid a financial crisis that has crippled the country, to Iraq ending a year-long stalemate to elect their own president. Just earlier this month, youth in the MENA region say climate change comes second to ensuring the availability of basic services, finding work opportunities, and achieving regional stability. But as youth protests have also gripped the world in recent weeks, and climate activists have been seen gluing themselves to priceless artworks in museums, youth in the Arab world, such as Iraqi cafe owners, say they are still far behind. Over in Egypt, where you get the opportunity to watch several artworks in front of Egypt's pyramid, and this is in an art exhibition titled Forever Is Now. You can catch a glimpse of it if you stay long enough in the country, as the exhibition continues till the end of the month.
Out in the open, with the view of Egypt's Giza pyramids in the background, contemporary artists showcase their pieces. The exhibition Forever Is Now opened on October 27th and will stay until the end of November. It's the second edition by Art d'Egypte, an Egyptian cultural platform promoting contemporary art in heritage sites. Some of the participants explain the meaning of their work.
This 20 meters of metal line on the floor. You can walk in during the day, or during the night there will be a really strong light of line that go to the pyramids and go after it. And you can go walk down and follow the light and be amazed that this is a magnificent place.
تعرف النخل لأن أنا أجي من منطقة اسمها الأحساء السعودية. فاحنا عند واحة نخيل نستخدم الجريد النخل ذا باستمرار في حياتنا اليومية يعني وكذي. فأنا حاولت إن أنا في ممارستي الفنية من فترة إن أنا استخدمه يعني.
Let's now take you to an extremely rare official first edition printed copy of the U.S. Constitution as adopted by America's founding fathers at a convention in Philadelphia in 1787. It will be up for auction by Sotheby's on December 13. In November 2021, the other first edition printed copy of the U.S. Constitution sold for $43.2 million, a record price for a printed text. Well, copies from that first printing, bearing no signatures and believed to have originally numbered about 500, were also furnished to delegates of the Constitutional Convention itself.
The first printing of the United States Constitution that will be sold on December 13th here at Sotheby's, New York. This is the first appearance of this copy of the Constitution at auction since 1894. Last year, we had great success with another copy, which is one of only two, this being the other, copies that are available for private ownership. That set a world record last year. This year, we're very excited to see what happens come December 13th. I think it has a meaning for Americans, and I also think it has a meaning for anyone that's a member of a constitutional democracy or a Western democracy. This document is actually the longest running extant example of a democratic constitution. This is what inspired democracy around the world in some respects. When you think about the foundational documents, you're thinking about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And even though I'm an American, I like to think that those three documents have a resonance beyond our borders, for sure. This is one of the foundational documents of American democracy, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's priceless. But I think we really have to wait and see what the market decides in December. I mean, last year when we had a copy, that was the first copy available for private ownership to come up in 40 some odd years. It almost tripled its low estimate. There's always the potential for this to happen again in December, but we're going to find out. When this was printed in 1787, there were perhaps 500 copies that were done. The only copies that survived are 13 copies that we know about. Of those 13, 11 are in museums or private museums or institutional collections. There's only 2 that are in private hands, this being one of them. The estimate on this copy is $20 to $30 million. That's why we're having the auction, to see what it's going to achieve.
Oh, December 13 isn't far away. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.